Okay, welcome back to the Founding Fathers of Education, Part 3. Ready? So, we're moving from Vygotsky to Howard Gardner. Now, you've already learned about Howard Gardner. You might not have remembered that. I introduced him on the first week that we met each other with the Multiple Intelligence Survey. I use his work in my classroom to find out what multiple intelligence area my students are in the moment that we begin class. So the multiple intelligence theory comes from Howard Gardner. Here's his photo. Howard Gardner is a philosopher. He was born in 1943 and is still alive. He does his work with Harvard University. One of my favorite quotes from Howard Gardner is, "I want my children to understand the world, but not just because the world is fascinating and the human mind is curious. I want them to understand it so that they will be positioned to make it a better place." That's one of my favorite Howard Gardner quotes. I'm a huge fan of his work. Vygotsky is my other favorite theorist that I base a lot of how I teach off of, setting up the social environment, things like that, having assigned seats, changing it frequently, which I know that some of you guys don't like. But as the teacher, that is what we need to think of the environment. It's very important. You guys have already done those chapters 9 and 10. How do you set things up? What equipment should you have? That's just as important as the resources and the books and everything else. So in our textbook here, multiple intelligence, remember I taught you that on the first day. Intelligence is not just cognitive skills. Cognitive is our thinking, our mental processes, right? That process. It's not just that. Each child has a unique learning process and is shaped by cultural and hereditary experiences. So those, the multiple intelligence that we looked at and had you guys answer questions was bodily kinesthetic, musical rhythmic, logical mathematical, verbal linguistic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, visual spatial, and naturalistic. There is another area that Howard Gardner has been working on, and that might be added here in the future. So there is one that they are working on adding. So I just want you to be aware of that. Logical mathematical, bodily kinesthetic. Sorry, I went off my list. So bodily kinesthetic is using your whole body or parts of your body with great skill. All right. So these are our children with great strength and athletic ability. Okay. They need to be athletic. They need to be able to move. Okay. So these are our kids who they're going to have trouble sitting still in a seat for long periods of time. And we need to understand that. And right now my cat is having trouble relaxing. He's playing if you hear that in the background. Sorry for that. So musical rhythmic is thinking in musical terms. Children with this ability hear and recognize patterns. They have great music talent, playing an instrument, singing, reading music, but they see things in a different way. And they enjoy music experiences in the classroom. And then with music, I always say movement too. So you can do music and movement activities with young children and help those musical and bodily kinesthetic learners. Logical mathematical is manipulating of numbers, quantities, and operations. Children with this capability, they like to count things. They like to sort things by, color. Okay. They see things in a different way. Like they kind of take things on as a problem and they immediately notice patterns. I'm not a mathematical intelligence person. So this, I don't see the world like this. So, but there are some people who mathematical is just their thing. Then we have the verbal linguistic, if you remember. The verbal linguistic person uses language to express themselves and understand other people. People who have this intelligence enjoy looking at books. They enjoy telling stories. They enjoy using words to describe their feelings. Hello, this is Miss McGrath. If you know me, this is me. Okay, I love to tell stories. I'm always thinking of ways that I can explain things and paint a picture with words. That's who I am. Okay, so the next, interpersonal, okay, inter and intra, I easily get those confused. So let's just remember the interpersonal is understanding of other people. Children with this intelligence can figure out other people's feelings and abilities. Okay, so interpersonal is understanding of others. Okay, they like doing that. An intrapersonal person is they like understanding of their self. Okay, who you are and what you can and want to do. Children with this intelligence have a realistic grasp of their abilities and challenges. So they're more into themselves, and they're not as social as our interpersonal. Okay, so the interpersonal child is more social, and then our intrapersonal children are not as social. So we need to understand that we'll have both of those types of intelligence in our classes. Visual spatial is visualizing three-dimensional world with ease. Children with this ability enjoy puzzles, drawing, or painting. These children may even excel at pointing out directions from one location to another. So they understand maps. And they remember the visual landmarks of going to places. And they have some type of artistic ability. Then we have the naturalist, understanding living things and nature. Children with this ability enjoy hiking, gardening, learning how to care for the environment. That's caring for the environment, being outdoors. Some of us, this is like a second area for us that we're close with. And we have a big appreciation for living things, all living things, animals. Okay. Now, the other one that they're working on, which it may have already been added, is existential. I know I don't have that listed on here, but just know that this one is an existential intelligence, which is the possible ninth area, is someone who questions life and death and spirituality. Children with this intelligence are deep, sensitive thinkers and feelers. Okay. So this theory from Howard Gardner changed education. When I was first, going into college 25 years ago and learning education, this was all just developing. So I was able to teach with it as it was developing, which was very exciting. Okay, so now let's move to the other new guy. So this is Kohlberg. Okay, he has been recently added as an educational theorist. There's some debate on Kohlberg, and because a lot of his theories is with older children, like our school agers, because he's dealing with more abstract kind of thinking, moving from concrete to abstract, and moral development. Okay, so he lived from 1927 to 1983. He's an American in New York. He is a philosopher and student of child development, but his philosophy work stayed with moral development. Okay, he was also director of Harvard's Center for Moral Education. Because of, unfortunately, in our society, with crimes and killings going on with young people, teenagers, And then, we have a rise of school agers committing suicide. That's where his work has brought new light to this area of moral development. So his special area of interest is how they develop a sense of right, wrong, and justice. Okay. So I'm just going to talk about his stage 1 and 2 a little bit. There's a pre-moral or pre-conventional stage. You have a focus on yourself. So when you're young, you're very self-centered, right? I mean, we know that. They're very self-centered. It's all about me. It's harder for them to understand other people. That's a very normal place for us to be in, right? It's all about us. Behavior motivated by anticipation of pleasure or pain. So when we make choices, we're either, if we're choosing to do something that maybe other people in society would say is not a good choice, there must be some type of, if we keep doing it, there's some type of pleasure we're getting from it. Or if it's causing us pain, we would stop. So this is kind of like, how some of the choices that young people are making, for some reason, morally, self-harm. We're finding some children are getting pleasure from that because they keep repeating it. Okay, so he talks a little bit about might makes right. So I'm not going to go into a lot of that. Just focus down here on the questions. What must I do to avoid punishment? What can I do to others? Okay, so he says they're going through a punishment and obedience. Might makes right. Sorry about that. I think I went to, okay. Then he talks about the egoist as being the second. And this is an area where they're questioning, what's in it for me? What must I do to avoid pain and gain pleasure? Okay, so this is focusing on, are you a good boy or are you a good girl? Okay, are you a good, which I always say that students are not bad. They just keep making bad choices and they haven't learned strategies to change that behavior. And changing behavior is a process. It takes at least 6 weeks or longer. And you have to have the right adults and people in your life. Sometimes the first time you go to a counselor or a therapist, the first person you go to might not be a good match. So sometimes we have to help parents through that. We have to help kids, keep trying to figure these things out and go to other specialists. So the other thing, critics of Kohlberg's work would be Carol Gilligan. She's another theorist. She's a woman. And she was saying that a lot of his theories just deal with a male perspective. And so she's kind of added on some different things with females growing up. And she says that females have a focus on self to exclusion of others, focus on others to exclusion, determinant of self. Okay, so this is all really brand new. So Carol Gilligan, Carol Gilligan is someone that, if you're interested in this, that's someone that you could pick for your theorist research project. I'm just kind of giving you a little background. This is where, because Kohlberg is newer, I couldn't find him in any of the textbooks that we had access to, but he is listed in the standards that to be introduced in Ohio to early childhood education students. And he's known as one of the founding fathers now of education. So I was able to get this from Pegasus at EDU. EDU websites are more reliable, so just something to think about. So we're going to stop there. Those are our theorists, and then I'm going to give you some instructions on your project.